In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law, I wish to state that on April the 5th, 2019, the notice of this meeting of the Upper Township Committee was posted on the official Township Bulletin Board mailed to the Cape May County Gazette, the Atlantic City Press, the Ocean City Sentinel, Ledger of the Herald Times, and filed with the Township Clerk. Tonight's meeting is being video recorded up until the closed session portion of this meeting and will be available on UTTV Channel 97 and on the Upper Township website. I hereby direct that this announcement be made a part of the minutes. And I would ask all to rise for the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Barbara, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Barr is absent this evening.
Mr. Barr is on vacation. He's not returned yet.
Mr. Coggins?
Here.
Mr. Corson?
Present.
Mr. Young?
Here.
And Mayor Palumbo?
Here.
4 members present.
I'd say let's do the approval of the minutes and then we'll skip the report of the governing body and go right to the budget so that Mr. Costello can do his thing with us and then, depart. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the March 25th regular meeting and the closed session minutes?
Motion to approve as read.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Is there any corrections, deletions, omissions that anyone's aware of? Hearing none. Would you call the roll?
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
And Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. All in favor?
All right. So, Barbara, you want to read your section and work with Leon as well?
Well, we have to do the cap ordinance first.
Right. So this is item number 1 is public hearing and final adoption of ordinance number 4, 2019, calendar year 2019 ordinance to establish the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank pursuant to NJSA 40A 4-4514.
And Leon, this isn't the actual budget. This is the
old spending cap ordinance that you don't need, but you need the bank to issue. So it doesn't affect the budget at all.
Okay. So at this time, I'll open it up to the public if anyone would like to address the Township Committee with respect to the budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. Let the record reflect that there was no public comment, and I'll close the public hearing part of this and entertain a motion for adoption.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 4-2019.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. All in favor. Item number 2 is the authorizing the reading of the 2019 annual municipal budget by title only.
Motion to authorize.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
And Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 3 is the 2019 budget public hearing, and I don't know, Mr.
So before I open it up to the public, Leon, would you give us a summarize for us, please?
This is the night for the public hearing, and you introduced your budget a month ago. What we have before us tonight is the same budget that you had a month ago. There are no changes to it. We are approved to be self-examined, so it doesn't have to go to Trenton for their examination. You get that every 3 years. It still contains a little over 1 cent tax increase, like we talked about at introduction. You've had many meetings on this, you've discussed it thoroughly, and tonight is the time for the public hearing. If there's any questions from the public, we'll field those. At that point, you can either make a motion to amend, which no one's told me that they want any amendments, or adopt the budget as is.
Okay. John, do you have anything to add? I know, Luke.
Nothing at this point to add, and welcome the comments from the public.
Okay. So at this time, I'll open it up to the public. Would anyone from the public like to address the Township Committee with respect to the 2019 budget? I'm trying to be very patient, but it doesn't appear that there's anyone in the public that is here to address the Township Committee on the budget? Last call. Okay, so let the record reflect that okay, let the record reflect that there is no public comment, and I'll close the public hearing portion and entertain a motion for adoption. You have to read something?
Yeah.
Read the resolution.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Upper in the County of Cape May that the budget herein before set forth is hereby adopted and shall constitute an appropriation for the purposes stated.
All right, would someone like to make a motion to accept?
So moved?
Second. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
And Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
And I'd like to acknowledge the work that Barbara Spiegel has done, and John Coggins, our committeeman, and also Leon, your input as well, Leon Costello, our auditor. This was, I thought, back in December, we were, very leery as to going forward with the budget. We had a number of increases from insurance premiums. We've had some salary increases and those kind of things. But I think to drill it down to a little over 1 cent was a great feat, actually. And I'm very pleased with where we're at with this budget. So thank you for all your work. It's greatly appreciated.
So you have a budget now for another year.
Yippee!
No money to build the wall, though.
Is there any, I know we have one other issue here, right? The local unit.
And we have the local unit budget exam resolution.
And that just merely solidifies the fact that you're allowed to do this on your own, and that resolution goes with the budget to say that it was examined by Barbara. Everything's been met and everything's satisfactory.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you, Leon. We
Thanks.
appreciate all your help.
Thanks, Leon.
Take care. Good night.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back to the reports. Do you have anything for us this evening, Scott?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and committee members. Just two things this evening. One, I just wanted to recognize the efforts of the Upper Township Business Association along and in conjunction with the Upper Township Sentinel. A little over 2 weeks ago, they came out with and distributed our annual Upper Township Community Guide. And in recognizing this document, this tangible document, I have to recognize and acknowledge our township team, the Clerk's Office, Public Works, Upper Township Engineering, Emergency Management, the Upper Township Beach Patrol, and Upper Township EMS for their hard work that went into all the different articles and things that are contained within this magazine. And I do want to recognize, and also too, all the Upper Township clubs and associations, a special thanks to them for contributing to the success of this magazine. And I do want to acknowledge, for the purpose of public safety, pages 12 and 13 of the magazine this year was an article that was introduced and well documented, I feel, by our EMS chief, Jay Potter, and that was two articles, actually. The preparing of an EMS response. Basically, it's just documentation on when you call 911 in an emergency situation, especially in a medical emergency, who's coming, what information you should be providing in that 911 call to the dispatcher, and kind of a compilation of how that emergency transpires. So again, it's a lot of great information. I think they did a wonderful job this year, and I just wanted to point that out to the committee. And the second thing I have is just an updated report on brush and leaf pickup for this time of year, April. Brush in Petersburg should be done tomorrow, and for both brush and leaves. the chipper will be going out on the highways, leaves in the area of Arrowhead to Summers Avenue, and then out west toward, toward Petersburg. So, and then there'll be another round pickup probably in another week or so for anybody who didn't get their stuff out. So, and that is it.
Okay, great, thank you. Barbara?
Just have two announcements. The first one is, we're going to hold a National Day of Prayer ceremony on the first Thursday in May, May 2nd at 10 a.m. here at the Upper Township Municipal Building. We hope everyone can join us for that. The second thing is, offices will be closed on April 19th in observance of Good Friday. If your trash collection falls on April 19th, your household trash and recycling will be collected on Monday, April 22nd. And the last thing is our next meeting will be the last
29th?
Yes, the 29th, April 29th. So instead of 2nd and 4th, it'll be the 2nd and 5th. That's all I have.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Daniel?
Nothing at this time, but we do have a number of contract negotiation matters and a couple personnel matters for closed session.
Paul?
Thank you. First, I just would want to report that we had a excellent turnout of residents that came out to pick up free tree seedlings a week and a half ago on Saturday, the 29th, I think it was. About 40 residents came out. We gave out at least probably a little over 200 tree seedlings. Hopefully they all got planted well, had good weather for everybody to do the plantings on Saturday or that Sunday. Good turnout, so I just wanted to report that to committee. The next thing I just wanted to report, if you saw in your mail, that we were awarded another grant from the Department of Transportation for roadway construction for the continuation of additional funding on Commonwealth Avenue. Later this evening, we're actually going to be awarding parts of Commonwealth Avenue, and we probably can use that towards that project instead of taking those additional funds out of the municipal bond. Once we get the final paperwork from the DOT, I'll be able to coordinate with them to consolidate those two projects for funding purposes.
Did you also meet with the Parkway or something about Beasley's Point?
We did meet with the Parkway on Friday to discuss the repair work that's required to happen, and most of it involves lowering that roadway. If you've been down there, you know they had to raise that roadway to get out to that temporary trestle. Well, now they got to bring that roadway down, reconstruct it. They're also going to be replacing the guide rail that's along there, and they're also going to be installing a dry hydrant water main between the parking lot on the Beasley's Point boat ramp area and then to the other side at Cove Road to provide emergency fire protection so that they can be able to pull the tankers up since they can't get underneath of the old bridge at the Parkway. They'll have this fire line to be able to shuttle water to the other side without having to bring the tanker trucks down the Parkway and down and try to maneuver them on Cove Road. So it'll be a much more improved fire safety situation for that. In doing so, the construction of that, and because of the low clearance underneath the bridge, they have to bring in special equipment to construct it, and it's also going to take a very slow period of time. They are going to have to put up a 2-day detour to close the road down for a full 48 hours. And the residents that live back on that side of Harbor Road and Cove Road will have to go out on the Parkway. They're actually anticipating closing a lane of traffic down on the Parkway so that they have an easier time to enter out on the Parkway. They'll go Parkway North up to the Summers Point exit, make the U-turn, and then come back southbound on the Parkway to head south if that's where they needed to go.
So you're going to have to pay a toll?
They would have to pay a toll. But it's for a 2-day period, and they could have done most of the work, but with constructing that fire water main, there's just no way because of how narrow that is, because it really narrows down to one lane. They can't do that work and maintain a safe lane of traffic. So there's really no way to avoid it.
So did they happen to tell you what they're doing with the new bridge, that they seem like they're reconstructing the new bridge already? Like, what is going on there?
Thinking of,
You mean at the base,
Yeah.
on the Summers Point side? They're constructing foundations for overhead signage, electronic signage, message board signage. So it's all constructing foundations for that sign.
they're taking, the last I knew, they were taking the lane separators out of
Yeah.
the middle too.
Well, they've done that on the one side, but
Correct.
on the south side, but not on the north side, like the south part of the new bridge.
Correct.
They'll get to it.
They're in the process. I mean, I think the overall contract, they need to be done by May 1st. So finishing up that ID sign or that hazard sign, and then having the restoration work on Harbor Road will be one of the last things they have to complete.
So are they going to give us at least a week notice to tell the residents
Yes.
about the hydrant?
Their final, we met to kind of go over the final plans to make sure that there were no things that had to be, additional things that needed to be addressed as part of construction. Their design engineers finalizing those plans, should have them done this week, and then they'll present them to the contractor so that the contractor can work up their schedule and pricing for the parkway.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I had to report.
Thank you. Barbara?
I have nothing this evening this morning.
Okay. Committeeman Coggins?
I just wanted to make an observation. I happened to be traveling in a vehicle down Tuckahoe Road with a relative who doesn't live here in the township. And he said to me, "Oh, is that your city hall?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you better tell somebody to fix the clock because it's an hour fast." I don't know if we've noticed that.
What happens is that it does, we set it back when it normally does the time change, but the time change from when the clock was originally programmed, the calendar was, they moved when we change our clock. So it's always, we change it, it gets adjusted, and then this past weekend, when this was the weekend that it normally would have changed,
It'll go back.
it'll go back. So I was not in the office today to change the clock, so I'll do it tomorrow morning.
So what you're telling me is we're still operating on the Gregorian calendar?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Committeeman Young, you're going to give us an update on the Easter egg hunt. I
Yeah,
imagine.
well, the Easter egg hunt will be this coming Saturday, the 13th. Rain date is the 14th. The event will open up at 12 o'clock. It'll be from 12 to 3. The Easter egg hunt itself will begin at 1 o'clock. We're kind of figuring probably 20 minutes to a half an hour per age group, but don't count on that, because if we get done early, I've had parents come in with their kids thinking it was 2 o'clock, and we've already been done at 10 and 2, because things are moving along faster, so please get there early. We're going to have the Easter Bunny there, we're going to have a petting zoo there. There'll be a photo op time for the kids with the Easter Bunny, and we're putting out 25,000 eggs. So come on out, and we also are looking for volunteers. If anybody wants to come help put the eggs out and control the kids at the gate for us, that would be greatly appreciated. It's a mad rush. When we say go, look out, because they're flying,
Just, is the rescue squad on site?
Yes.
Yeah. The other thing, just so parents are made aware, our younger age group, which is up to 3,
I believe that was.
I believe it's up to 3. There's one parent and one parent only permitted in the Easter egg hunt area. It was like a demolition derby the last time we had 2 out there. And so we limited it to one parent, so just be warned that that's what it's going to be. So that's where we're at with that. And the other thing I have, Rich, just to make everybody aware, the football field is working at the refreshment stand at Codwell. Their big big cold boxes blew out on them, they're shot. The McIntyre family from Sketty's has donated all stainless steel equipment for there. So they're in the process of taking everything out of it. While they're doing it, they had Avalon Tile donated the tile to tile the whole floor with the skid-proof tile for kitchen. And they're going to be doing a little bit of reconstruction in there, but nothing plumbing-wise, electrical-wise, or gas line-wise. So there shouldn't be any permits. I did tell them that if they do anything in that area, that they need to get a hold of Dory and make sure that we're, we're okay with that. So, John had brought it to my attention. I just want to make sure everybody else was aware. Also, while we're on football, I got a phone call from Chick Costaboon, and they have offered to resod the entire middle of the field from hash mark to hash mark. So I think football is going to buy the sod, and Chick Costaboon and his crew from Tuckahoe Turf Farm are going to come in and do it all in deck rolls. So I already talked to John about it. Scott will have to get coordinated so they can pop all the heads up to make sure when they skin the field, they don't tear the heads out for us. The other thing is the lights there. If we're going to do anything before this coming season or get some ideas, we've got a lot of problems with electrical down there with the ballast as well as all the poles. A lot of poles are rotted. It's something we're going to have to get pretty serious about before long. So I know we had a preliminary price, but maybe we need to look for a secondary price or something to see where we are on that.
Okay.
But again, if we're going to do it, the time's ticking. Also, baseball lights, you said that the bulbs are ordered for them?
I'll have to double check. I know we got the quotes for them, but I was out today myself, so I'll double check.
Yeah, they had their opening game tonight. So again, we need to get on top of it, and if we are going to do it, then we're going to have to rent a lift.
Okay.
From Advantage, I think it's 85 foot or something, Paul, we used before, to get them done. So I just want to try to stay on top of it so they're not halfway through the season when the lights out. I think we took care of the problem with the scoreboards. John Adams and I met at nighttime and went down there, and there's a dimmer switch on there. There's like 10 different settings, and somebody kept cranking it up to the top setting. So we turned it all the way down, and John's going to have a sign put in there. Do
So
not
there's no
touch
need
it.
to put any other covering?
I think, I actually got behind the catcher and was checking everything out.
Good.
The coaches over there seem to be very pleased with it. And the lights are amber already. So when you crank them up to 10, they're bright.
Yeah.
So,
Why do we have a dimmer switch on it?
what's that?
Why don't we?
It's right on the board.
Came with the skills, the
The
scoreboard.
board has it, so you can brighten it and dim it whatever you want. So, and unfortunately, it's right in the board, so there's no way to block it off. We just got to put a sign up there and say, do not touch this. The only other problem I have has been an ongoing issue is the Tuckahoe Road lacrosse field and the parking situation there. Past 2 weekends, I've gotten phone calls, they've had videos sent to me with cars parked on both sides of it in people's front yards, in their driveways, and I don't think we could get an emergency vehicle down there if we had to.
Well, we have it signed. It's an enforcement issue.
Now,
Why don't we call the state police and have them ticket
I
everybody?
think we told the state police, Ray Scott, that
Lieutenant Henry's here tonight. When's the next lacrosse game?
they'll have to get together with Larry. I mean, it varies, they're all different times. But we're going to have to, again, that program keeps growing and growing, we're going to have to look at creating some additional parking there.
There's plenty of township woods there.
Oh, no, so I'm saying we got plenty of woods right on the left-hand side. If you
There's
look at it.
parking here. Didn't we knock a trail through the
Oh,
woods?
again, it means we got to get some major signage done. And it can't be a 1 foot by 1 foot, it's got to be big signs to direct people. So I want to make committee aware of it, that this is not going away. Okay. And I think hopefully with the new commander at the barracks that will.
He's right here.
He's here, good. Before we had a little bit of an issue with the troopers coming down not wanting to write tickets. So if we can, you could, direct your guys, the south side of that street is dedicated no parking. And I think it's only going to take 1 or 2 weekends to send a message. But if they're parked on that no parking side, we would love to have somebody down there.
So as to not hopefully antagonize some of the parents, why don't we also include something on the website with the lacrosse information and say that, we've had parking issues, there's neighbors that are complaining, we need to be considerate, so that, first of all, the state troopers have a lot to worry about as well.
Oh, I know.
And second of all, we certainly don't want to be ticketing parents if they're attending their children's game. So let's try and
The sign,
hopefully work it out.
it's well posted, they just choose to
Right.
ignore it because they know there's no enforcement. And enforcement will solve the problem.
So we at least give them some warning and then we take care of it.
Larry already sent them an email issuing a warning to them that this is how it's going to be. Problem is, once games go on, nobody has time to go out there and enforce it.
Well, that's not, the enforcement job would fall on the state police. And if they went down there and they wrote 20 tickets up, but the next day there wouldn't be any there.
We've got quite a few senior citizens and, down on that street, and some of them just had open heart surgeries and bypass surgeries, and they were the ones I was getting phone calls from. They're scared to death that they had put in a cardiac arrest. You're not going to get a machine down there. You couldn't get a fire truck or a rescue squad down that road. And it's as far as you can see from the state field, all the way down past Culver's house.
What if we amended our ordinance to say cars parked illegally will be towed and bid out the towing and just have the towing companies enforce it?
But you have to ticket it too.
Yeah.
You have to ticket them before you tow them?
Yes, and there's a
and
whole
really,
set of statutory rules with
How
towing
many
companies.
cars can they tow during the 1 or 2 hour?
They hook up to one or two, I bet you people stuck with them.
Luck of the draw.
They're getting $200 a car for the tow.
Yeah, frankly, I think if you ticket a few of them, it'll stop.
Yeah, I would agree.
A lot of this is the away teams, because, the Upper Township people are already at the field with their kids getting set up. If the away team's coming in, there's no parking.
So we can capitalize on visitors.
So, I just, I don't want to send a bad message out there either, but it's,
No, listen, we have to address it, and, and seriously, we need to find a way to, get into a compromising situation where we can work out the parking for the sports events, but also not cause, harm and difficulty to the people that are living there as
and yeah,
residents.
maybe we'll get some of them parked here, and if we clean this cut through and put signage on it, the cross fields this way. But I think the best thing to do is take that left-hand side of the high oaks and clear that and make, if we can, I think we got to stay under 50, right, Paul?
Yes.
So it doesn't trigger Catherine. But if we could put 40 in there, that
Well, you
would
stay under 50 parking spots, but I mean, so you have 50 parking spots
and park 100 cars.
and then another spot that's grass.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're not called parking, you call it a dog walking area. and
Again, to me,
let
it's
people
becoming,
park there.
it's a township road, it's becoming a liability issue, Rich. Because if somebody doesn't get the services down there when it's needed, I don't want to see the township get sued. And that's where we're heading with it, because it's getting pretty irate with the people down there right now. They love watching the games. But, and the part of the problem is too, is what we have to realize, they're staggered like 15 minutes in between games. So you have the two teams that are playing, and the other two teams that are following them come in, so it's double the amount of teams at all times down there. And without lights, that's the way it has to be, or they never get the games in. So I'm open to any suggestions, but
What if we got some temporary fencing and put it up along the property line or the edge of the roadway?
there's no room there now, and they just park right out in the street. They're 3/4 of the way in the street.
Oh, they're in the street already?
Yeah, because the telephone poles there are only about, 3 feet
Yeah, I
off the
think-
property line?
I gotta believe if you put temporary fencing in people's front yards, that's gonna be worse than the cars.
Anyway, just,
All right, so
Whatever we can do.
take a look at that, Scott. Let's see if we can work something out on the
And I'll
best way
work
to
with the
address it.
lieutenant as well.
Yeah, if he has our little cross schedule, he can send a car down there and make a presence. I mean, I think,
if not, we got to consider trying to find an additional place to move them to.
well,
So, that's all I have, Rich.
Mayor, can the lieutenant address?
Sure.
So is this what's it, is Saturday and Sunday event?
Saturday and Sundays, they have games.
We'll send you a schedule, Lieutenant. Yeah.
Appreciate it, thank you.
All right, because, and they're not home every weekend, like this weekend, travel was away.
Okay.
So it's only, I think, 4 or 5 weekends that they actually had this problem. All right.
Yeah, we'll be pleased.
Thank you.
And the other thing, just real quick, was our car show. We had tentatively scheduled for November the 5th. That's the same weekend they're having the Racing Gentlemen in Wildwood. So we're moving the car show to September the 28th. Rain date will be the 29th.
Okay, all right. Committeeman Corson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They have, tonight at the middle school from 6 to 8, they have the substance abuse professionals in there talking to parents. I reported on it last meeting, but also tomorrow night at the Ocean City High School Library. And it's a good program for people with their children if they're, worried about what signs to look for and all. It's a good program to go to. The other thing I had, been talking with the fire chiefs. Upper Township does not have a fire inspector. Right now, we rely on the state fire inspection, state fire marshal. And they currently do the commercial properties and all that. And if we were to look at having our own fire inspector, we could also encompass rentals. And I don't know if you remember the chop shop. There was an apartment upstairs there. There was a host of issues wrong with that situation. There was windows in the front of the building that were sided over and boarded over. That were probably egress windows. Would have probably made a difference. Not that it was, everything worked out the way it was, but we could have a fire marshal or a fire inspector inspect the rental apartments. They could also do real estate transitions where your smoke detectors have to be certified. Most of the realtors just sign off on it and do it themselves. But if we had a fire inspector, they could go in, they could do it. And like I said, all the commercials are now in the township done through the state. With the committee's permission, I'd like to have Scott do a little investigation. I'm curious to know how many state fire marshals do in the township. I know my business, they come in and they inspect that every year, they charge me $250. That happens time and time again with these businesses. And I'm just kind of curious how much revenue there is there, and if we could maybe start investigating our own or a joint service with one of our neighboring municipalities. It would probably be, if we could do the fire inspections ourselves, I think we could actually probably almost make money with it, but have a better handle on the rental apartments, some of our commercial businesses, and the real estate transfers.
Well, even if we could pay for the inspector, we'd be ahead of the game, probably.
Yes.
The other thing you could look into, and I used to do it for Summers Point and Weymouth, is resale inspections.
Yeah, that's-
Incorporated all in one. It's a whole different thing than the fire. You go out and look for basic life safety issues. And at that time too, if you see a shed or a pool or something, you can come back and say, does it have permits before it goes to sale? Instead of dumping it on the purchaser, the seller has to make those things good before they go to sale. It gives you a chance to clean up some of the properties.
And I'm not saying that's the way we want to go, but I think we need to investigate it, and I think there's money in,
You can incorporate both of them.
and there's a lot of stuff that our town, the township could glean some information out of that for our own people. We have an incident goes on in commercial businesses, boom, our fire inspector, if there's a fire, he could go there and say, I'll be careful, they store their chemicals over here, here, and there, and all that stuff. Every commercial business is supposed to have a manual and all that stuff, but, some do, some don't.
So would the fire inspector also do like fire extinguishers to make sure that they're in date and those kind of things?
They do it on changeover on the sale of property. If you're doing on rentals, we're gonna need a rental registration ordinance as well.
It's just something yeah. And honestly, that's probably not a bad thing, because how many rentals do we have in Upper Township?
I don't know.
Exactly.
There lies the problem.
No.
All right, so,
It definitely helps on the code enforcement aspect of it.
And it's just something I think it bears a little investigation, and something that, like I said, I'd like to direct Scott to take start doing some investigating on it and find out details.
sounds like a plan.
That's all I have.
Right, the only other thing I have, I'll tailgate on to the Easter egg hunt. The shops of Tuckahoe Village is having their second Saturday marketplace this Saturday, and it's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., so you could either do it in the morning before you go to the Easter egg hunt, or after the Easter egg hunt, but would certainly be something I'm giving a little plug for the shops at Tuckahoe Beach.
I actually went there last month, and they bring a food wagon in, obviously you have to pay for it, but the food wagon comes in about noon. But they also, one of the local breweries had a wagon there, which is quite interesting.
Well, I'm helping Committeeman Young with the Easter egg hunt, so I'm not going to be drinking beers before I go to the Easter egg hunt, so. Otherwise, I'll be throwing eggs all over the place.
We usually do anyway.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so enough of that. Do we have anything, Barbie, you want to pick up from the resolutions, please?
Okay, item number 5, designating May 12th through May 18th, 2019 as Food Allergy Awareness Week in Upper Township.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 6, authorizing the mayor and township clerk to sign a contract with Ansero LLC for professional information technology services.
Motion to authorize.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Plumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried, accepting the bid and authorizing execution of a contract with Lambert Construction LLC of Dorothy, New Jersey for the project known as the NJDOT Municipal Aid Project, reconstruction of Commonwealth Avenue Phase 1 and Bayview Drive Phase 3 at a cost of $597,440.70.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 8, authorizing the mayor and township clerk to sign a contract with WSP USA for design and engineering consultant services.
Motion to authorize.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 9, authorizing the award of a professional services contract with Dr. Stuart C. Farrell of the Coastal Research Center at Stockton University for shoreline monitoring and consulting services for beach-related issues.
Motion to authorize.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 10, authorizing a contract with W. Michael Bailey for public safety communication services.
Motion to authorize.
Second. And Scott, this is the consulting firm that helps us with our repeater?
All of our communications, the towers, the antennas, repeaters, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It does a great job for us.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 11, accepting the written indoor quality air program and confirming the appointment of Paul E. Dietrich as air quality control officer in charge of compliance of the program pursuant to PIOSH Indoor Air Quality Compliance Program under NJAC 12-100-13.
Motion to accept.
Second. So you're PIOSH genius, is that what it is?
That's what they
Yeah, certified.
That's quite an acronym.
Okay. Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion's carried. 12, confirming sale of certain land for Block 45310, Lot 378 to Route 50 Campground LLC.
Motion to approve.
Second. Paul, do you want to give us an update on this, or?
This is just something that we've been working on for several years. They have to consolidate the lot with their adjacent lot, and there's no further development that can occur on that lot, or they can't use that lot as part of the expansion of the
You
campground.
passed an ordinance on it, and the actual person requesting the sale was the high bidder, a little higher than the minimum bid set.
Okay.
A few $100 higher, correct? Or
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Let's call the roll.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Abstain?
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried with 3 in favor and 1 abstention. Item number 13, refund EMS ambulance billing overpayment to Liberty Mutual Insurance.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Carried. Item number 14, tax refunds for homestead benefits.
Motion approved.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 15, tax refund for Block 549, Lot 120.
Motion approved.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 16, authorizing the mayor and township clerk to sign and submit a safety contract for participation in the Atlantic County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund 2019 Safety Incentive Program.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
And Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 17, authorizing the purchase of a New Holland Workmaster 60 utility tractor and accessories in the amount of $23,404 through Sourcewell, formerly NJPA National Cooperative Contract with funds from the 2018 Capital Improvement Bond Ordinance.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 18, appointing the 2019 season beach patrol personnel.
Move the resolution.
Second.
And I just want to say, this is a skeleton crew to help us get ready, get some of the boats ready, the stands, work on getting things prepared for the summer season.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 19, appointing members to the Community Emergency Response Team, CERT of Upper Township.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
And I
20,
would just like to say, there's quite a number of individuals that have been certified for the cert, you know, I mean, it's quite a number, almost 20 people, so
Yeah, this
that's
is-
great.
This is 2 classes that we've had, one 2015 and then one more recently in 2017. And yes, they are certified, and not only do they help our community, but they also assist Ocean City.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, correct.
Great. Let's hope we don't need them for anything other than
Always tell 'em.
volunteer activities.
Item number 20, amending Upper Township policies and the job description for the Township Administrator.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 21, under new business. Greater Tuckahoe Merchants Association requests to hold the 38th Annual Tuckahoe River Canoe, Kayak, and Paddleboard Race and Poker Run on August 4th, 2019.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 22, Upper Township Rescue Squad requests to hold a raffle, number 517, on June 2nd at the Tuckahoe Inn.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. 23, Planning Board recommendations for land use ordinance revisions. Mr. Dietrich, up to you, guys.
So we'll let Paul
Okay.
give us a summary, and then Dan, if you'd like to interject up.
There's essentially 2 documents that you have before you. One is one that we looked at probably late 2017, early 2018. We tabled the further introduction of it because we incorporated some of the changes in our property maintenance code. And then when the COA issues started coming up, we didn't want to confuse some of the land use ordinance changes. So this ordinance that was recommended by the planning board and the master plan examination just never came forward. But since we've done some other things with the Strathmere ordinance, I thought it was appropriate to bring those changes back. I did talk to Dan about some of those.
There are a
some
couple
tweaks.
minor tweaks basically to make it consistent with discussion and the ordinance on property maintenance. But other than that, there really isn't anything wrong with the ordinance. It's consistent with the master plan review.
Did we incorporate in that a better description of trailers and disrepair?
Yes, and it explains that if you received approval or you were grandfathered under some prior approval, you get to keep it. That's one of the tweaks that came out of the discussion from before with the property maintenance.
So you're grandfathered, or is there
If
a
you
stipulation?
received an approval, which there may be one or two commercial entities that were allowed to use trailers as storage, you're not going to abandon those. We're going to make it clear in the ordinance that they're permitted.
Or if you
Because they
already,
received approval for them.
or if you had it documented that the trailer's been on your property for an extended period of time prior to the adoption of the ordinance,
And
it can
it's a
remain.
permitted use.
Correct.
It can remain if it's kept in repair.
And,
Like we
correct.
do with our, a lot of our non-conforming.
If they're not
Prior to
conforming,
1976, then they could remain there, they were grandfathered.
yes, you understand, your former zoning officer.
So is that when
you-
this is going to go to 1976?
This is going to make it clear that if you are either grandfathered because of what you just described, or you received approvals from municipality, then your trailer will be able to stay.
So-
However, if you never received approval and just put it on there and you don't have a site plan, or if it's a non-conforming use, we're not going to legalize those. You can't without a use variance.
But my question, like we do with the other things, it's 1976 in our book. Is this
They would have to prove that it pre-existed
prior to
zoning.
1980?
They would have to,
or-
well, you understand how that works. It's a legal determination. I guess you're saying for the rest of the committee, that it's a determination either by the zoning officer or the zoning board that it's a pre-existing conforming use.
So,
A non-conforming use, I'm
but
sorry.
I think, I don't know if this is what Mr. Young's trying to get to, but some of the testimony that we had experienced in the past, there were several residents that said that the trailers had been on their property for many, many, many years.
And that is true. For example, if you have a property that has a commercial operation and it's been there before zoning, I hope you keep saying the 76, I assume that's when our zoning code was adopted. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
All right. If it was prior to zoning and there was no regulation and it was allowed at the time, it remains to be allowed. You can't expand it without getting approvals and whatnot. But if you can prove to the zoning officer or to the zoning board that it pre-existed, if someone complains.
But you still have to maintain it in
I have to
reasonable
believe if
repair.
a trailer was put on the property in 1976 and not maintained, it's
No,
not,
I don't
it's in
think we
disrepair.
should use 1976, but I just think if we don't have a date that, you
I don't know what the
been on
date is.
prior to, or you're not grandfathered.
If you put a date in, it's an arbitrary date. And the law says if you pre-existed before they changed and adopted zoning regulations, you're allowed to continue.
I know you mentioned commercial, but it's also in regards to residential.
Anybody, if I have a commercial use in a residential zone, and I've always had it, I had it there before zoning regulations came in, I'm allowed to stay, as long as I don't abandon it. But that's really a legal determination that a zoning officer is going to have to make on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we had, the teeth in there that we need that they can stand up.
Well, it's the law generally, and what
But we were clear
tweaked
as
was to
far
make
as-
it clear that the ordinance doesn't try to override that.
But we were clear as far as disrepair and abandoned.
That's a different ordinance, that's maintenance.
All right.
So if you had a trailer from 76 and it's rotting, they better maintain it.
Okay.
The second component document that you have is the planning board about 6 months ago put together a subcommittee with 2 members of the planning board. Hobie sat on several of the meetings, as well as 3 or 4 residents of Strathmere to look at some of the bulk standards in the resort commercial and resort residential zones. We spent an exhaustive amount of time in meetings. We had the planning board's planner, Tiffany Cuviello, or Tiffany Morrissey, I'm sorry, work with that subcommittee and myself in going over different bulk standards that we thought we needed to address when we adopted the flood hazard zone ordinances back in 2000. 13 and 14 that raised and changed how we measured heights. It created some unintended consequences and small little loopholes that, they were building out of characteristic of some of the development patterns that had occurred in Strathmere recently. So the document that you have kind of is the fruit of that labor and goes over a lot of instituting a floor area ratio, looking at a lot of different aspects within both of those zones. And the planning board, at its last meeting, made a recommendation that it was consistent with their last reexamination report, and recommended to the committee to adopt the ordinances. After talking with Dan, there was a provision in there that we were looking at putting a provision in the resort commercial zone that allowed residential uses to be a permitted conditional use in the commercial zone as long as it met those conditions. Well, I'm talking with Dan, the master plan did not specifically state that, so there's some...
The master plan didn't really address it at all, just said the Strathmere needs to be reviewed. And Hobie, with your background in zoning, you'll know this, but maybe the other township committee members are not aware of it. When you change a zoning district use, you don't have to notify if it's that change is pursuant to a recommendation in the master plan re-exam. Our master plan re-exam didn't identify this as a change in use in a resort commercial zone. In my opinion, what that means is that you have to notify people within 200 feet of that zone and the people in that zone that we're changing the uses in that zoning district. So you understand what the use is. We have, I believe, Paul can identify it better than me, but I believe it's the area of resort commercial that is south and west and east along Commonwealth, correct?
Right, it's from Willard Avenue down to, not just quite down to Prescott, I think right around Prescott, essentially the one property in along Commonwealth, and then it's kind of the block where Uncle Bill's and the Duville Inn is. That's the resort commercial zone.
That's resort commercial, but the change has got nothing to do with the blocks where Uncle Bill's and Duville Inn.
It's just that one strip along Commonwealth Avenue.
The one strip along Commonwealth. And the change is to allow residential as well under the residential standards. In other words, it's a little similar to what we have in Tuckahoe, where you can have residential or commercial, so it's not a use variance. This one is a conditional use because frankly, they want to be very clear to the zoning board, don't allow bigger than what we're allowing in the residential district. So you have to stick with the residential standards.
So this change could take an existing commercial property and ultimately allow it to be residential? Is that what we're saying?
If they meet all the conditions.
And there are essentially, out of the, I think it's 58 properties in that section of the resort commercial zone, there's only 5 that are commercial properties today. And all the rest of them are residential.
Already non-conforming. And if they comply with the standards that they set in that ordinance, the residential, they can rebuild as residential. They don't have to go into the zoning board to get a use variance.
Yeah, we
now,
don't say-
one thing, just so you know, if you go forward with this, the clerk's office is going to have to notify, I asked Paul to do a count, and I believe it's like 238 homeowners, taxpayers on the tax bills, certified mail to do this change, because this one's not in the master plan. The rest of the changes are, I understand, it's a compromise, for want of a better way of saying it, it's a compromise between the landowners' rights faction of Strathmere and the people that are not happy with the larger buildings.
Conditional uses usually work very well. We've done it with gas stations in this township over the years. I think car lots, if they met certain conditions and they could be in certain areas on a smaller lot or whatever it was, but they have to meet it or they need a use variance.
But you don't want to take away your core commercial, but from what I understand, I didn't look at the map. Did you produce a map for tonight or no?
Not of that area.
All right, we should have a map at introduction so you can see it. But from what I understand, the core commercial is staying strictly commercial. It's only the down Commonwealth where it's a mix of commercial and residential, and you still build commercial. It's just that the residential is permitted now, and if you want to rebuild as residential, as long as you comply with the residential standards already in the ordinance.
Paul, just one question I had. Unfortunately, I missed quite a few of the meetings, but in that commercial zone, are you allowed to have commercial first floor and our residents on the second floor?
There's no provision for a mixed-use building.
All right.
No provision. And I would note that, that when the planning board held its meeting last month, the Stratford Improvement Association did notify its membership via email and gave them, a draft copy of the ordinance as what you, or close to what you've seen here this evening, as well as they notified their membership of this evening's meeting. At the planning board meeting, we did have 2 members of the public that came out and spoke, and they had concerns about the provision of one of the provisions is making for lots over 8,000 square feet, decreasing the building coverage from 27% to 20%, and increasing the side yard setbacks to kind of, some of the structures that were being built on some of the larger lots, their massing is becoming quite large, and so the thought was and the need was to kind of compromise on that size and then move some of that setback off of the property line so that the neighbors were so crowded in by some of the more larger buildings on the larger lots.
So instead of 4, it would be 8, something like that?
We went to 12.
To be on a scale?
We went to 12 on
Okay,
lots
good.
over 8,000. So that was, but it was just that was, those 2 residents only were concerned about that one provision, and that was, I just wanted to, let the committee know that the public, and since that meeting, my office or Shelley's office has received no calls, comments, or emails regarding the ordinance.
But I do think we still should absolutely notify the residents.
Well, you have to if you're going to adopt that one provision. You can't get around it. The question is, do you adopt everything without the notice, or do you spend the $1,600, whatever it is, dollars for certified mail to those people? And because you can adopt the ordinance without changing that one provision and just leave the commercial zone alone and not send the notices and wait till another master plan reexamination, or you can, ask Barbara to send the notices and we'll put it in the ordinance.
Adopt it subject to.
You can't adopt the subject to, you got
No, I
to,
mean, if we're going to approve.
the
it,
notices have to go out
notices.
before final adoption of the ordinance.
Okay.
It's got to be just like a notice of a hearing, it's got to be 10 days ahead in the paper, 10 days ahead to the certified mail.
Well, you're saying it's $1,600 due to certified mail?
It's $1,600. That was a long-winded way of saying, are you okay with spending $1,600 and making Barbara send a notice?
I mean, is there anything crazy going to happen in that strip and then between now and the next master plan reexamination? Probably not.
Listen, I can tell you just from a general sense, residential on the beach is more valuable than commercial on the beach. So you may have people come in who have commercial properties and say, now I'm going to build residential. I mean, that's one of the things that the islands are fighting with because the commercial is moving offshore.
I think to make this a smooth transition, I prefer personally, and it's up to the committee, that we send out the notices, find out, if the residents do have any input, and then we can either incorporate or not incorporate in the ordinance, and then we can move forward. So, I mean, $1,600 is, it's money that we need to spend to notify the residents, so.
I agree.
I'll make a motion.
So we're going to do both proposals, the Strathmere and the prior land use ordinance that was tabled before we did the maintenance. I'll bring them both in for an introduction, and Barb's office will do the notice. Okay.
And only the people within 200 feet of the resort commercial district will be notified. Not everybody within Strathmere will be notified. It's just within 200 feet of the resort commercial district.
I'm sure they'll hear about it.
I know, but I just wanted to just reiterate
Well,
that.
I think what we're trying to do is follow the letter of the statute. That's what we're trying to do. So do you need a motion to that effect?
It might not be a bad idea to authorize me to prepare an ordinance.
I'll make that motion to move forward with that.
Okay. Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried. Item number 24, Stockton University Coastal Research Center, final report for 2018.
Okay, Paul, so I went through this, it's voluminous, so can you give us just a small summary?
We lost a lot of sand in the north end.
Well, that I can see by the pictures that are in
And
here,
there's
but
an update to one of his comments on the Army Corps. He said it would be, they're not scheduled for maintenance operation for several years unless there's a presidential disaster. Paul has obviously updated you recently on that we expect it in the next year.
And I'll further that report. I actually walked the beach with the representative of the Army Corps and the DEP Bureau of Coastal Engineering last week, going over the project scope and limit and how everything looks. Obviously, the north end, you see it the worst from probably just south of Williams, obviously north up into the natural area on the ocean front. The natural area, I'll say, as you go around to the west on the inlet side, that's probably as large and as wide as it's been in a decade. So they're going to obviously do all of that work. There's actually some berm as you would head south of Tecumseh, that the upper part of the beach is high, but some of the, I'll say the word side of the beach is slightly lower, so that, they're going to be tapering down, probably not past Prescott, but down into Prescott with from a small amount of sand for us. This is, unlike the previous Army Corps Engineer project, this is, we've discussed this previously, this is a cost share project. The feds are going to pay 50% of the project. The state and locals short portion is 50%. Of that 50%, we're responsible for 25% of the 50%.
will they be taking sand out of the inlet there, the Corson's Inlet?
That is the planned hope at this juncture, to take it out of the inlet, yes. They're going to have some discussion, because there's so much dry beach in the inlet, because if you actually look at the pictures and you can kind of see it.
First picture.
The inlet is fairly narrow, so that there are some provisions in the permit that says that you can't cut into a dry beach. So since it's not underwater, it's dry, it could limit it. They're going to probably look at trying to get some exclusions from that, but that could be a problem. The other problem is a lot of the shoaling is possibly outshore of the borrow zone. So whether or not they can, go outside of the borrow zone to catch that, they can't go on the south side of the inlet and along that shoal, because that's where one of the shipwrecks are. So I'm sure some of the treasure finders would love to know that we were in that area again and go out treasure hunting on the beaches again. But
No, now they use the grills. They collect all the potential
got
gold
smart to that.
medallions and that they
Yes.
found the first time back in 2008 that were just sitting on the beach.
Though they say those grills are for collecting of munitions, I think
Yeah.
they have an ulterior motive for those grills. Yes, I agree. So, but the project is anticipated to be this fall, winter, 2019, 2020. It will not commence until after the birding season, September 15th or 30th, so it'll be no earlier than October where it would start. It's also being combined with the northern Ocean City, the Great Egg Harbor Inlet portion of Ocean City project, the southern end of Ocean City, Strathmere, and Sea. So it's all four sections.
So
of
that helps
Beachville.
us with staging costs.
To some degree, it does. They're still looking at it, but it should be a help to the cost, yes. And they anticipate sending us a letter probably in early May, mid-May, of what they feel that the anticipated dollar amount that we're going to need for the project. So we'll be able to have that, and they're looking to be able to receive those funds before the end of the state fiscal year.
So have we confirmed that the state has the funds as well?
The state has already paid the federal government for their share and the township share. So they've already, they've already paid the Army Corps for the project, or for the 50% share.
Okay.
They actually had to, for the entire Normally, the Bureau of Coastal Engineering has a $25 million budget. This year, they actually, I think they had to request, I think, $40 million they're looking for to do the projects that they have on the board for not just the project that's here locally, but all up and down the Jersey coast.
All right.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, would someone like to make a motion to pay the bills?
I hereby move that all claims submitted for payment at this meeting be approved and then incorporated into the full minutes of this meeting.
Second. Call the roll.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
There are several reports from the municipal departments, the clerk's office, construction code, finance office, MUA, and tax collector. All of these reports will be available upon request of the clerk's office tomorrow morning. And I'll make a motion to accept these reports.
Second.
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
So at this time, we've reached the public comment portion of the meeting. If anyone would like to address the Township Committee, now's the time to do so. Please come up to the podium, state your name and your address and your reason for approaching the Township Committee.
Evening. My name's Tom Rossi. I live at 605 Commonwealth Avenue, Strathmere, New Jersey. I was a member of the Planning Board subcommittee that created this product that Paul presented to you tonight. And I wanted to tell you that there's a concurrent movement, another committee that is in process of doing what we like to think of as a more broader review of issues that are ongoing in Strathmere. I guess the general idea is that we want to see if we can develop some rules that will keep Strathmere. As Dan pointed out, the master plan doesn't speak much to Strathmere. I don't think it speaks at all, other than to have a little blurb in there that says we got to get around to planning some things for Strathmere. So what we decided to do was to hire our own professional planner, and we've already interviewed 4 professional planners, and we're going to hire one in the near future. And we're going to pay for this ourselves through community funds, and we're going to come back with you with a more pervasive product. And I wanted to just tell you that so that when we come back and say, wow, you made us pass this ordinance in April or May of 2019, now you're coming back, you want to change things. I think that our work with the Planning Board Subcommittee was a little bit of a stopgap because there has been an explosion of development in Strathmere, and because, as Paul pointed out, there was this change of height 6, 7, 8 years ago, whenever that was, that sort of created lots of problems and allowed people to drive trucks through big loopholes. We needed to do something quickly to kind of dial back on that, and that's really mostly what this ordinance does, is dials back on that. But again, it's sort of not an all-encompassing study of issues that we see are ongoing in Strathmere. So we're obviously just beginning this study. We haven't hired someone yet, but we'll be back here with a more comprehensive set of plans, rules, plans, changes. I don't know what exactly it's going to look like, but I just thought it would be appropriate to let you know that it's ongoing, we're working on it, and I would appreciate at some point the opportunity to present it, so maybe that'll be next year. Thanks.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Eileen Barrett, and I was here a couple of weeks ago when this issue came up about their ordinance that they had proposed, and it was approved by the planning committee on the 21st of March, and they were bringing it to your committee tonight. And I am one of the people that was extremely upset by this proposed ordinance in the way that it affects people that have larger lots. So I wrote some notes down, because I'm not a great experienced public speaker. But I appreciate you, Mayor, for your immediate recognition that this needs to maybe be really approved, maybe, by the citizens of Strathmere before this gets any further. But I was strongly opposed to the proposed ordinance, and I was more concerned when I was here last than I am tonight, because I feel you're going to do some proper notification. But this ordinance differentiates between larger and smaller lots, and it is arbitrary and unnecessary to apply these restrictions to larger lots in excess of 8,000 square feet. This proposed measure is an infringement on our property rights and negatively impacts the value of our property, and I take it very seriously. It is not the larger lots in Strathmere that are the offenders. It is the bigger houses on smaller lots that has gotten this ball rolling, and it is time to put a halt to the idea that they're going to attack the people that have larger lots by greatly minimizing the potential of what can be built on the larger lots. So, for example, the new building coverage issue that they proposed, they're taking what is now an acceptable lot in Strathmere is now down to 40 feet by 95 feet, and that is a 3,800 square feet lot. And the maximum building coverage that they proposed, which exists, I believe, today, is 27%, which would be 1,026 maximum building coverage on a 3,800 lot, 2,800 square foot lot. So, for example, my property is 80 by 110, which is 8,800 square feet. They're trying to suggest or put through, which I was concerned 2 weeks ago, that they were putting through where the larger lots over 8,000 square feet would now have a new restriction of 20% as opposed to what exists today of 27%. And it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, because let's say the 3,800 square foot small lot of 40 feet by 95 feet is 1,026, and then you're talking about a square footage of 8,800 square feet. Putting the new restriction of 20% would equal 1,760 square feet for a property that is 5,000 square feet larger than the 3,800 square foot property. That would result in a 616 square foot diminished building coverage for a larger lot. So this whole idea, I don't mind them working on trying to, put in issues about overdevelopment, but some of the overdevelopment issues that have arisen, the very high buildings, et cetera, that shouldn't be on the backs of people with larger lots. That's another issue that should be investigated, sort of a research project of why we had the problem of some of these very large buildings, and it has nothing to do with large lots. And I don't think that they should try to create a separate book of rules for large lots as opposed to small lots. So, thank you.
Thank you for sharing your concerns. And that your testimony will be taken into consideration. We're not even introducing an ordinance, so, there's still time to further address the township.
Well, I appreciate it now, speaking, hearing you tonight, but when I was here 2 weeks ago, I was very concerned that there was a real push to get this through because they're concerned about a lot of the proposals that are coming in for building. But really, the catalyst, and this committee has been small and not publicized. In today's world, email, you can reach everybody to tell them about what is being done. And there has really not been a lot of communication about this proposal. So I just feel better tonight than I did 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
Okay. Would anyone else like to address the Township Committee?
Good evening. I'm Blanche Adams, a resident of Woodbine Road in Steelmantown, and I'm here representing the Upper Township Business Association. I have 2 questions and 2 quick updates. So my first question is, and it concerns traffic again and parking issues. Back in February, I think, Hobie, you brought up the possibility of purchasing an additional lot next to the community center for parking, and I was just wondering where we are with that.
I think somebody had looked into trying to purchase that from the owner, and the number was astronomical.
And I'm not sure you're the right person to be.
No, I have a conflict.
I was going to say that. How about if I address it?
Yeah.
Okay. We have put some preliminary feelers out as to interest in the property. And at this time, it really is substantially overpriced. And so, although we have great interest in doing it, we have to do it within, a structure that would fall within the parameters of the assessment of the property. We certainly would apply for Green Acre money to do that if it was more in line with what the property's assessed at. So, until we get to somewhere close to that, we obviously can't do anything. We have to be good stewards with the money from the township. We just can't go and say, okay, this is what you're asking for it, and it's that valuable to us that we're paying for it. So that's kind of where we're at this point, but we haven't eliminated it. We haven't ruled it out. If we can somehow get to a compromised figure that, is comfortable with the committee and, our tax assessor and everyone else, and we go to the county and work that way, then we'll pursue it. Because we would like to have more parking.
The problem is if we spend county open space, Green Acre space, anything, even our own township money, you have to have the property appraised. If it's appraised for X amount of dollars, we can only pay X amount of dollars. We can't pay more.
Yeah, I certainly get that. And driving by there at night when events are being held, I don't have to tell you how scary that is.
Well, we realize that it's a safety hazard, and we are doing everything we can to address it. And again, I don't want to get into the details or whatever, obviously. I don't want to compromise our negotiating position, but, I can say that, it's something that we value and find very important to hopefully get to a point where we can get the property to have parking there.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you for addressing that. My second question has to do with the Harbor Road property. I know that, it's been in the news lately, and we're working hard. It's one of the big projects that you have identified for 2019. I think, Paul, you talked about maybe having a plan in place by this summer. Some of the things that I was reading about was the fact that the county is going to be working on the design for the signs and the kiosk and the benches and things like that. And we are also, as a community and as a business association, interested in working on that whole Roosevelt Boulevard beautification along with the county. So I was just wondering if we can't have like a meeting of the minds so that we're working together maybe to brand it, and not brand it just to the county, but brand it to Upper Township. So the business association definitely would love some discussion on that. So do you think it would be possible, Paul? Could you address us or have a public meeting or a business association meeting or something so we could kind of toss those things around?
I was working with the planning board. We're hoping to have we worked on a bike master plan, bicycle master plan for the township. We're hoping to present that at the May planning board meeting. I was going to discuss with committee, since I don't know if the planning board is going to have much on that agenda that month, of whether or not that we wanted to, either do it there or host a more formal open house regarding some of the plans that we in the county have come up with for Harbor Road. So it's, we haven't finalized how we're going to present that and when, but
okay.
At least
I think a meeting possibly with the county representatives, yourself, some of us. I know Deputy Mayor Barr has worked on a lot of the discussion. I think to give an update as to, what's being planned there, and it would give the business association, some idea. I know that you also have a big interest in Roosevelt Boulevard
Yes,
as a gateway.
definitely.
And again, we've been working on the lot, but there's some difficulties with that lot where the old gas station
That old gas
was,
station, yeah.
for environmental reasons. Some of the issues we run into, we agree with what's being presented, but when we look at potential liabilities for the township, we have to be cognizant of that as well. So we're trying to balance that as to, work with the business association and work with the residents, but also realize that, we can't put ourselves in a situation where potentially we could be responsible for $1 million cleanup or something. So we need to work on some of these things, so.
Okay. So it would be great to have input into that, so thank you for that. Is there any update on what's happening there? Because I know Summers Point seemed like they were pushing back and had some issues with safety, and they didn't want it opened until certain things were happening there, and then I see that they're really pushing the state to get something going with it. Like, what's the update on the Summers Point side, and even on the opening side?
I haven't heard much about the Summers Point side. I know that they were actively working with the DOT to come up with a solution of how to get people from, I'll say, on their side, the westerly side of Route 9, to get them over to the easterly side of Route 9, and then down to County Route 559, and then try to work up towards the circle, or the old circle. So, but I've not heard an update of where they
I do know there was preliminary discussions on the Summers Point side that they had talked about putting some sort of fishing pier on that side of the old Route 9, as it were, the Beasley's Point Bridge Street Road. But I haven't seen anything recently about it, so.
Okay. It's exciting project, exciting for the business community and the residential community, just bringing more people into the township and letting people know about the township. So that's why we're interested in the branding part too. So great. They were my two questions. Two quick updates. We had our restaurant week this 2 weeks ago, so I hope that some of you were able to get out to some of the participating restaurants and enjoy what they had to offer. Preliminary reports from our resturants was a thumbs up. Everybody had good things to say about it. We're definitely planning another restaurant week for next year, so it was good, and thank you for your support and helping us to publicize it. And then my second thing is our book. So Scott, thank you so much for the shout out for the book. I brought with me, or I want to introduce Steve Zellers. Steve is the man who made it all happen for the last 3 years. We partnered with Steve from the Sentinel 3 years ago to produce the first one. He takes the ball and runs with it. He currently serves as our vice president of the Business Association. So I just wanted to let you know and give Steve a chance to say something.
Yes, I just really wanted to thank the township for the input into the book and also for the support of the book. This is a great reference guide, not only for the businesses, but also for the residents and also for the visitors to Upper Township. And we will shortly have a link that you'll have access to that you can put on your website. So that'll be coming shortly, so you know.
Right. Personally, I put it, there's no such thing so much as a telephone book anymore, but where I used to keep the telephone book, I now keep the reference from the Upper Township businesses. So, I thought it was very well done. I certainly went through it and wanted to make sure the information about Upper was correct. So I was keeping an eye on Scott's information and everything. But I do think it's a really informative document, and I also think that to make it more available to the transient visitors that come here in the summertime. It's nice to get it, in the weekly newspaper, so that we all have it as year-round residents. But I think there's important information in there for, our summer residents as well. So putting it in, some sort of web form that they can, get into on our site would be a great asset. So.
Yeah, you have that. I'll be coming. Thank you very much.
Right.
I'll make this brief. It's late. My name is Linda Bateman, 14 East Tecumseh in Strathmere. I'm also the president of the Improvement Association. I wanted to, first of all, thank Paul Dietrich for his inclusion of Strathmere residents in the latest planning board ordinance review, and also to thank Jim Kelly from the planning board and Mr. Young as well. And from representing Strathmere and Whale Beach, we had Janice Connell, who's the SIA Vice President, Ted Kingston and Gary Riordan, both from the planning board, Brian Riordan, and of course Tom Rossi. And Tom, I think originally approached Paul and then spoke at an SIA meeting in August and asked for volunteers. Don't want to underestimate how important that was to us and how appreciative we were to be included in planning. And as you know, we have been, and not just the SIA, but other organizations in town have frequently attended Township Committee, Planning Board, and zoning meetings, and have tried to raise awareness of what was going on in town. And it was a thrill to finally, not finally, but it was a thrill to be part of this committee. We also thank you for budgeting the money for the professional planner to help facilitate and work through this. And we knew that the 2006 master plan and building code needed some of these. But as we also many times have said, we have a lot to offer in Strathmere, and then we have such a variety of residents and homeowners who are willing to get involved, who have relevant work experience to lend, who have historical and firsthand knowledge of what life has been like in their 80-some years in Strathmere along the beaches and the bay, and of course our passion to preserve what we have that we see ebbing away from us, and also of course the side effects that this has on the ecosystem and the fragility of what we have when lots are clear cut, when paving replaces vegetation, and of course the effects on flooding. We were happy that the planning board moved to bring this to you tonight. We recognize there's a lot to be done, and that the public will have input. We realize that we need to interact with builders and architects and work with them to build to our codes and not to think, well, we'll just get a variance. And we hope that the ordinance will reap that a variance will be a rarity as opposed to what we've been seeing lately. And therefore, obviously, the planning board and the zoning board will ask them to uphold this. Ultimately, we believe, and I think that some planners will bear this out, that this will help to increase our property values. Not high building density. People buy in Strathmere because they want single-family homes, because they want an environment that's rich with birds and wildlife, and we can't achieve that if we're building and pushing all of that out. We want our dark sky, and we can't have that when we're giving approval for houses to have 14 lights just on one side of the house that remain on all the time. We are ruining the environment and our coastal environment that way. What sets us apart from the towns that we neighbor of Ocean City and Sea Isle is the uniqueness and the emphasis and the value that we put on preserving our life. And we thank you, and we look forward to more of this, and again, repeat that we're always willing to be part of the process. Thanks.
Anyone else? Seems it's got very quiet in here. So, it appears we have no other public comment. I'll close the public comment portion, and I'll turn to Mr. Coggins to entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I hereby move that a resolution be incorporated into the minutes authorizing the Township Committee to enter into an executive session for the following matters pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act. The matters are contract negotiation for tax map maintenance, for grant consultation, for payroll services, and for special legal counsel, and also matters of personnel. I also include in my motion the estimated time and the circumstances under which the discussion in closed session can be disclosed to the public is as follows. It is anticipated that the matters discussed in closed session may be disclosed to the public upon the determination of the Township Committee that the public interest will no longer be served by such confidentiality. With respect to employment personnel matters, such discussions will be made public if and when formal action is taken, or when the individuals involved consent that it can be made public. With respect to contract negotiations, such matters will be made public when negotiations have ceased and there is no longer a reason for confidentiality.
Second. Can you call the roll?
Mr. Coggins?
Yes.
Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
And Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Motion is carried.
Thank you all for appearing this evening and attending. Please drive safely and enjoy your week.